Hey, welcome to the shop. You know, the world of trucks is really diverse. You've got your street trucks and your four-wheel drive stuff. Then you have your slammers and your hot rods. This show is not about those. This is about the big boys, the guys that use diesel trucks, because they really do towing and hauling, and they really need all the power that they can get. So, today we're going to take this brand new F-250 with the Ford Power Stroke. We're going to show you how to get some serious performance gains and not hurt the truck and keep it in a reasonable budget. So if you're into diesels, you're going to like this. In the late 50s and the early 1960s, a young hot rodder by the name of Gale Banks began modifying various cars and trucks to not only go faster on the street and impress the girls, but also run flat out on the Bonneville salt flats.
It started about 1954. My dad bought a Model A 31 Ford for $35. And for the next 2 years, I did everything I could possibly do to that car.
So, with a growing reputation, it wasn't long before this enterprising youngster opened his own shop to supply racing engines for customers.
At the beginning, I called the business CP Auto and Marine because I was earning money to go to Cal Poly. I wanted to learn how you design the stuff I was bolting on.
Along about this time, Gale began to experiment with a fairly new technology to the automotive and truck world, and that was the turbocharger.
Along about the late 60s, I designed a twin-turbo system for the big block Chevy, and then later the small block Chevy.
For the next couple decades, Gale Banks continued to refine and expand the use of turbos in cars, trucks, and even boats. And at the same time, he built a state-of-the-art facility to manufacture performance parts.
Through our consulting work through the years, we came to know what's required to have OE durability. We bring that and our airflow knowledge from racing to the truck business today.
Now, Gale Banks went into business in 1960. That's over 40 years that he's been supplying quality, high-performance parts, and diesels are their specialty. Now, this system consists of a new housing, actuator, and compressor wheel for the turbo. You've got the AutoMind engine calibration module, new inlet tubes, connectors, and clamps for the transmission. You've got a command module and a transmission controller. Of course, those have their own harnesses, and we'll tell you what those do when we put them in. You also get new gauges and a gauge pod that mounts on your A-pillar. You have a high-flow air filter and, of course, a new intercooler. But that's not all. We also got a full stainless steel exhaust system that's 4 inches in diameter. 4 inches is the size of the sewer pipe in your house. Now, these are all pre-bent, have a high-flow muffler, and you've got a polished end. Now, I know this looks like a huge, intimidating pile of parts, but this is not that hard to put in, and I'm going to prove it to you. So, let's get started. All right, the first thing you need to do is to get that old exhaust system out of there. The tailpipe, the muffler, the whole shooting match. Now, about 95% of all diesels don't have a catalytic converter. So if your truck didn't come with one, well, you don't have to put one in. But unfortunately, if your truck came with it, well, it's got to go back in. Now, once you have the exhaust out of the way, it's time to go up on top and deal with the turbo. Okay, the toughest part about getting the turbo out is just getting to it. Now, don't be shy. You need to roll up your sleeves and actually get up in here, or you'll never reach it. Now, once you have all your inlet and outlet tubes undone, the wiring harness, all you have to do is unbolt it from the engine and take it out. Come on. Come out of there. One way that Banks is able to keep the cost down is instead of sending you a brand new turbo, very expensive, they give you the parts to upgrade your stock one. Now, it's very simple. Just set the turbo in a vise and remove the turbine housing. Be careful that you don't damage the blades. Reposition the turbo in the vise, then remove the compressor housing. Remove the compressor impeller and replace it with the new one. reinstall the housing, then reposition the turbo in the vise. Now we're ready for that new turbine housing, and it slides right in place where that old one went. Now make sure that you don't damage the impeller blades. Bolt it on. Finally, we'll put on the Banks big head actuator, and that will finish off the turbo. All right, what we've done here is increase our airflow and our efficiency of the turbo by putting on this housing and that new impeller inside the compressor. Now, these things flow about 20 psi stock. This one now flows 32 psi, but it's just as reliable as your stock piece. Now, the big head actuator controls your wastegate, holds it closed longer, so you develop peak boost sooner, which means great throttle response. Now, the best part is, putting this thing in is as easy as just bolting it back in place. All right, that takes care of the turbo. Next comes the exhaust brake. We're going to deal with that after our own break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Trucks. We are right in the middle of doing some serious upgrades on our new Ford F-250 Power Stroke. And the system we're using is Gale Banks' PowerPack system. Now, we've already got the new intercooler in, the turbo's back on, everything bolted in, no surprises. If you look real close, you can see that I've already got their exhaust brake installed because it bolts right to the turbo. Now, if you're not familiar with the operation of an exhaust brake, well, come on over here. Let me explain it to you. Now, using exhaust pressure as a supplemental form of braking, well, that's been around a long time. But the Banks brake takes it one step further. Now, the housing is cast in a nice smooth bend, and the butterfly sits a lot lower than a normal exhaust brake. This gives you 30% better flow when the brake is off, and that's really nice. Now, when the brake is on, the butterfly closes and gives you the back pressure you need to slow everything down. Very similar to compression braking when you shift down a gear. Now, the brake itself is wonderful, but to get the full benefit out of it, we also got the Smart Lock transmission controller. Now, what this does is lock up the torque converter and increase line pressure so you have a direct connection between the engine and the rear wheels. No slippage. That's what you need with an exhaust brake. Now, you can see by the wiring harness, you've got about 5 connections on each end, and that's all there is to it. Okay, now it's time to go back under the truck and finish some things up. First, we need to mount the vacuum pump for the exhaust brake. Now, all you have to do is mark and drill your holes according to the instructions, then just bolt it on and make your connections. Another component that we're going to mount over here on the passenger side underneath the truck is the Trans-Command transmission control module. Now, unlike the Smart Lock that works in conjunction with the exhaust brake, well, this actually increases line pressure when you're under acceleration. That way, when you stomp down on all that new horsepower, your tranny doesn't slip. Now, only Gale Banks has this, and it's really important because if you build an engine like that and you don't upgrade the tranny, you're going to burn it up. Ooh, that's expensive. While I'm under here, it's the perfect time to deal with this new exhaust system. Now, like I said before, it's all pre-bent. All the hangers are welded on, so it will literally just slide into place. Make sure that you got on a good set of gloves because these pipes will cut you. Now, once you have the turbine outlet pipe on, just slide on the intermediate pipes. Followed by this big old Dynaflow muffler, the tailpipe, and of course the tip. The tip should sit about 2 inches below the fender so you have room for expansion. Now, how far the tip sticks out is entirely up to you, but a good look is out about as far as the tire. Now, once you have everything positioned, go ahead and tighten all your clamps, starting in the front. All right, that takes care of the hookups underneath, the exhaust system, and yet another segment of the show. Now, after the break, we're going to finish the hookups up in the cab. Then we're going to turn the key on this thing and see if any of this makes any difference. I think you're going to be surprised. Welcome back. We are on the final leg of doing some upgrades on a Ford Power Stroke on this brand new F-250. Now, we've already upgraded the turbo, the intercooler, and the transmission. We put on an exhaust brake. Now all we have to do is make some connections, and that means going in the cab. First thing we're going to do is deal with these auxiliary gauges. Now, we got transmission temperature, turbo boost, and exhaust temperature, and they slide into this little plastic pod. Now, the pod mounts to your factory trim piece using these plastic rivets. Then it all just pops back into place. All you have to do is make your connections, do your wires, and you're ready to roll. Now we're ready to mount the switch that activates the exhaust brake. Now, the Banks engineers found the perfect place right here on the dash next to the steering column. All you have to do is cut out the template that comes in your instructions, set it in place, and drill your hole. Now all you have to do is make your connections to the idle validation switch down here on the pedal, to your supplied relays, then go under the hood, connect to the brake switch on the master cylinder, the actuator control valve, and then finally down to the vacuum pump on the frame. While I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and mount this smart lock transmission controller, and it sticks right to this junction box that runs underneath the steering column. Now, it's held in place with some adhesive tape that comes with the kit, and all you have to do is plug in your harness and run the harness through the firewall and make your connections. It's that easy. Next, we're going to deal with the AutoMind engine calibration module. All you have to do is remove the computer from the left kick panel. Now, once you have it all disassembled, remove the plug from the back of the computer, plug in the Banks AutoMind. It's a good idea to use a piece of tape to hold this thing in place. Then slide the whole thing back into the retainer. Now remember, you're going to have to cut off some of this plastic here so that AutoMind will stick up out of there. Then just reinstall it. Now, I know you're dying to know some numbers on this thing, so here's what we got. The Banks PowerPack kit will take your stock Power Stroke from around 200 horsepower to over 300 horsepower. It'll also increase your foot-pounds of torque to over 675. That's nice. You'll also expect to get a little better gas mileage, about 3 miles to the gallon, provided you can stay out of the pedal. Yeah, right. Now, all these numbers are great, but the real test comes out on the road. So, it's time to put this thing to the test. Yeah, we'll see what this thing will pull. Keep coming. All I can say is, wow, you need to feel this. Now, I may not have mentioned, but this is Gail's own personal truck, and it says a lot when a guy believes enough in his products to let him be installed on his own brand new truck, especially when he knows how hard I'm going to be on it to see if I can find a weak spot. I'll tell you what, I haven't found any, but I guess that's to be expected because Gail's got a reputation to uphold. But then again, so do I. So, Gail, this one's for you.